Welcome to the Big 12 Deep Dive. Today, we're going to find out if your team is going bowling this year. So we are going to go through every Big 12 team's list of schedule except for Iowa State, because I made a whole 60-minute video on that because I am an Iowa State fan, if you guys can't tell already. So if you're an Iowa State fan as well, you might want to go check out that video to see how we're going to do this year. But without further ado, we have our first team on this list, which is Arizona. Arizona start at home against Northern Arizona. I think that's a pretty obvious W for them. Then you go on the road to a BYU team who I think is going to be very, very tough this year, and one of the best, if not the best teams in the best team in the Big 12. I have Arizona losing this game 1-1. Then you come back home to take on Northern Illinois. I think that's going to be a win, 2-1. Not much to say about that game. Then you go to Washington State, a former Pac-12 matchup. I think you guys win it there, 3-1. Home against Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati is going to be very good this year. I think they're going to be okay, but I have Arizona winning that game 4-1. Then you go on the road to West Virginia, who I think is going to be a very weird team this year. If you watch, I think it was my last video or 2 videos ago, I talked about West Virginia a little bit. I've been getting a lot of mixed reviews on West Virginia from what I've seen online. I think Arizona loses this game, so that puts them at 4-2. Then you get a bye week. Then you go back home to take on Iowa State, and I have Arizona winning this game, so 5-2. Then you go on the road to Texas Tech. I think you guys lose. You're going to be 5-3. Then you come back home to take on TCU, who is also, I think, going to be a very, very, very good team in the Big 12 this year. I think you guys win against TCU, however, puts you at 6-3, so you're going bowling. Then you stay at home to take on another very tough team in Utah. I think you guys drop this one, putting you at 7-3. And then at Kansas State, I think you guys also lose this one, 7-4. And then back home for the Arizona State-Arizona battle, I think you guys get this one done, putting you at 8-4 in a very solid record. I do think Noah Fifita is going to be a lot better this year. Not that he had a bad year necessarily. I mean, it wasn't his best year, I don't think, especially at the start of the season. But I do think just with him being a veteran quarterback, and I think, well, I know for sure one of the most experienced starting quarterbacks in Power 4 level, if not the most experienced quarterback. But yeah, 8-4 for Arizona, very solid year. Next, we go to your rivals, though, Arizona State, who take on Morgan State. Obvious win, I would think. 1-0 at Texas A&M, I think, is going to be obviously a very tough challenge. I have Arizona State losing, going 1-1. Then you get an interesting game in London against Kansas, but I have Arizona State winning this one at 2-1. Then you get a bye week to come back home against Baylor. I kind of struggle with this because, it is nice that they will get a bye week. That'll help a ton. But I do still have Arizona State winning. However, if they didn't have that bye week, I don't think they would win this next game, no matter who it was against, to be completely honest. So I have Arizona State winning that one against Baylor 3-1. I also don't think Baylor's going to be very good. But again, I do think that bye is humongous for Arizona State coming back home. Then you guys take on Hawaii. I think that's a win, 4-1. Then you go to Texas Tech. I think that's a loss, putting you guys at 4-2. And then Kansas State, a home game. I have you guys losing this one, so 4-3. At BYU, I have another loss for Arizona State, 4-4. Versus Colorado, a win, 5-4. At UCF, another win, 6-4. Versus Oklahoma State, I have a loss for Arizona State. I think Oklahoma State's obviously going to be much improved. It's hard to do worse than they did last year. I do think Oklahoma State's going to be a very good team, and I think that game is going to be very tough for Arizona State to win because I think by that time Oklahoma State will for sure have themselves figured out. So yeah, 6-5, and then at Arizona, I think Arizona will win that game, as I said before. So 6-6, so going bowling, but just barely. Then we move on to Baylor. I don't have a lot of high hopes for Baylor this year, even though I do think DJ Lagway is a very solid quarterback. I don't think he's going to be good enough to put Baylor in a position to win most of the games, though, however. So anyways, I put at Auburn because this game's in Georgia, so it's going to be mostly Auburn fans there. I have a loss for Baylor. So 0-1, then you come back home to take on Prairie View A&M. I have a win there, 1-1. Versus Louisiana Tech, another win, 2-1. Versus Colorado, I have another win, 3-1. So they're sitting pretty good right now, but then they go to Arizona State, as I said before, loss, 3-2. And then you get a bye week, and then you play at home versus TCU. I think that's a loss, so 3-3. Then you go to Lawrence, Kansas to take on the Kansas Jayhawks, of course. I think that's another loss, 3-4. So you've lost, 3 straight now. And then you go on the road to UCF. I think you guys win that game, putting you at 4-4. Then you take on Iowa State. I do think you guys lose this game, so 4-5. And then at BYU, 4-6. You need 2 more wins to get to a bowl game, and you play, in my opinion, 2 of the top 3 teams in the conference. Versus Texas Tech, that's a loss. At Houston, that's also a loss. So you're going to finish 4-8. Again, I just don't think this is a very favorable schedule for Baylor, especially the last 3 games for sure. If you can find 6 wins in the first 9 games, obviously you're going bowling, but I still think there's too many tough games, I think, for you guys to have 6 wins in 9 games to be 6-3 at that point, because I truthfully don't think that there's any shot of Baylor winning their last 3 games. So I have them at 4-8. Next we have BYU. They take on Utah Tech to begin the season. 1-0. Arizona, 2-0. At Colorado State, 3-0. Then you get a bye week and you go to TCU. I think this could be a flip game. I mainly just chose the home team here, so I'm picking TCU. So I have BYU standing at 3-1. And then versus Iowa State, pains me to say this, but 4-1. I think BYU is going to beat Iowa State. Then you take on Notre Dame. I'm probably going to get hate for this. I think Notre Dame is going to be a very, very solid team this year. So I have BYU losing this game at home. I think that this will be a crazy game, crazy atmosphere, but I just think Notre Dame's roster overall is too talented for BYU to win this game, so 4-2. At UCF, I have a win. Versus Arizona State, I have a win, so 6-2. There's your 6th win. You're going bowling, but give me 1 second. At Utah, which is again going to be another unbelievable game this year, as it was last year and the last several years, of course, and forever, really. I think you guys win at Utah, putting you guys at 7-2. Versus Baylor, win 8-2. At Kansas, another win, 9-2. Versus Cincinnati, a win, 10-2. So obviously that is the first 10-win team that we have coming out of the Big 12, in my opinion. UCF, I think UCF's the worst team in the Big 12 by far. Bethune-Cookman should be a win. At Pittsburgh, though, I think they'll lose that one. Versus Georgia State, that's your second win of the season, and you're only going to get 2. So I'll just go through their schedule and who else they play, but they're going to lose all these other games. Versus TCU, at Houston, at Oklahoma State, versus BYU, versus Baylor, at Kansas, at Arizona State, and versus Iowa State. I think the only 2 other games that they have on their schedule to even have a shot to win against is versus Baylor and unfortunately versus Iowa State. I don't see them having much of a chance in any other game. Especially like the road games. I mean, at Houston, at Oklahoma State, who's not going to be amazing, but I do think they're going to be much improved. And we'll get to Oklahoma State eventually, but yeah, I don't think UCF is going to be, and I talked about this in the last video as well. Like UCF's been a weird team to me in the Big 12 because they've shown signs of being an okay team in the conference, but they just haven't been an okay team yet in the conference. I think they had one decent year where they were 7-5 or 6-6, but that's been about it. So yeah, next we move on to Cincinnati. Cincinnati I did struggle with a little bit too, just because they do have a lot of new players this season. Obviously not as much as Iowa State or Oklahoma State, but I do think Cincinnati is going to have a weird year as well. But anyways, versus Boston College to start off the year, I think you guys get it done at home, 1-0. Versus Western Carolina, that's another win, 2-0. And then versus Miami, Ohio, that's another win, 3-0. Then you stay home. So your first 4 games are home. However, I think you lose the last of the first 4 home games to Kansas State, putting you at 3-1. Then at Arizona, putting you at 3-2. I think that's going to be a loss. Then you get a bye week to travel to West Virginia. I think that's going to be a win, putting you at 4-2. And then versus Texas Tech, I think that's going to be a loss, 4-3. Obviously, no Brennan Sorsby for Texas Tech, but I still think that game's going to be crazy. I think anyone who plays Texas Tech this year is just going to be an absolute brawl with the whole Brennan Sorsby situation and trying to get him back onto the team. And then obviously kicking him off, whatever, that whole situation. See Texas Tech versus Utah, I think that's going to be a loss, so 4-4. And then at Houston, I think that's going to be a loss as well, 4-5. I think Houston's going to be a dark horse in the Big 12, which I shouldn't even say that because I think there were 10-3 last year. Yeah, 9-3, and then they beat LSU in a bowl game. And then you go to Iowa State, who I think Cincinnati will lose to, so 4-6, and then versus Colorado, that's a win, 5-6. But then to get to a bowl game, I don't think it's going to happen because you have to go to BYU, so 5-7 for Cincinnati. Our next team on this list is Colorado. This is another one that I had a tough time with a little bit because I think Colorado is going to be improved, but not by much. I think they're going to be very similar to last year. So at Georgia Tech, I think is going to be a loss, 0-1. Weber State, that should be a win, 1-1. At Northwestern, I think that's going to be a win, 2-1. At Baylor, I have Colorado losing. I could see this being a flip game, though. There is 2 games on this list that I do have Colorado possibly having a flip game here. Versus Texas Tech, I think that's going to be lost, 2-3. Then you get a bye week to take on Utah the next week at home. That's going to be lost, 2-4. At Oklahoma State, I do have Colorado winning this one. That is not the other flip game though. Versus Kansas State, I think that's also a win, 4-4. Okay, I have a lot more flip games on this than I realized. At Arizona State, that's going to be a loss, 4-5. Houston's going to be a loss, 4-6. At Cincinnati, I think you guys are going to lose, 4-7. And then versus UCF, I think that's going to be win, 5-7. Yeah, going through this, looking at this again, because I just made this like literally right before I started this video. I think Kansas State could be a loss. I think Oklahoma State could be a loss. But I also think Cincinnati could be a win. I think Baylor could be a win. I think Georgia Tech could be a win. So even Northwestern, I think, could be a loss. So there's definitely, I feel like Colorado could be one of the more vulnerable teams to be really bad, worse than what I had them at 5-7, or possibly really good. Like they could possibly be 9-3 or something like that, now that I'm looking over this list again. So then we get to Houston. Houston is one of my favorite teams in the Big 12 this year because of the way that they were last year. So I do have high hopes for Houston. Starting off with Oregon State, a win, 1-0 against Southern is their second game, 2-0. Then they go to Texas Tech. I remember watching that game last year, which was crazy. I was hoping Houston would pull off the upset. They did not. And I don't think they're going to do it this year. So 2-1 for Houston. At Georgia Southern, that should be a win, 3-1. Versus UCF, should be a win, 4-1. At Kansas State, I have that as a loss, 4-2. Then you come back home to take on Oklahoma State. I have that as a win, 5-2. At Utah, I think Houston is going to upset Utah. So that'll be 6-2. Then you get a bye week to play Cincinnati the next week. That's a win, 7-2. At Colorado, win, 8-2. And then you got to go to Morgantown. You stole a win at Utah, but I think you guys are going to lose this one. So 8-3 for West Virginia. Then to end out the year, you come back home to play Baylor. I think that's going to be a win, putting them at 9-3. Then we go to Kansas. This is another team, too, where I don't think they're going to be amazing, but I've seen a lot of mixed things online about them as well. So Long Island, LIU, I think that's going to be a win, 1-0. Versus Missouri, I don't think they're going to win that, 1-1. And then this is the game in London against Arizona State. So I said Kansas would lose this one, putting them out 1-2. Then you come back home to take on Middle Tennessee. That should be a win, 2-2. Then you go to Utah. I think that's going to be a loss, 2-3. And then at Kansas State, sorry, Kansas fans, but I think the Cats are going to get this one this year. Again, for I don't even know how many years this is in a row. So 2-4 for Kansas. Then you come to play Baylor. I think that's going to be a win, 3-4. At TCU, that's going to be a loss, 3-5. Versus UCF, that's going to be a win, 4-5. You've got 3 games left. 2 of them are on the road against decent opponents. One of them is at home against a very good opponent. At West Virginia versus BYU, at Oklahoma State, and I think they're going to lose all 3, putting them at 4-8 to finish the season. Then we go to Kansas State, who will play at Nichols to start the season. I think that's going to be a 1-0. Should be very easy win for Kansas State there. Versus Washington State, 2-0. Versus Tulane, 3-0. At Cincy, 4-0. And then you get to a bye week. And before I get on this track, because I know a lot of Iowa State fans probably going to be like, you're wearing an Iowa State jacket, you're an Iowa State fan, why are you talking so good about Kansas State? Because they have Colin Klein, an offensive coordinator, who I think is going to transform Avery Johnson. And I truly do believe this. And I don't, as an Iowa State fan, I know I'm not supposed to like Kansas State, but I do. I think they're a very fun team to watch when they're not playing Iowa State. But I do think Kansas State's going to be a very good team this year, which is why I have them beating Houston, putting them at 5-0, and beating Kansas, putting them at 6-0, and then at Arizona State, putting them at 7-0. But then they go to Colorado. I think they're going to lose that one, putting them at 7-1, their first loss of the year. Versus Oklahoma State, I think they win that one, 8-1. At TCU, I think that's a loss, 8-2. Versus Arizona, I think that's a win, 9-2. And then at Iowa State, I can't pick against Iowa State in this one. So I have Kansas State losing this one, 9-3 to finish the season. Then we go to Oklahoma State, who, again, is, I think, going to be much improved, as I've said several times, or at least one other time. I don't think they're going to be anything great. I mean, they're going to be good for sure, but I think, and they have really good players, but I think just the level up from the teams that North Texas played last year to the Big 12 is going to be a bit of a shock for them. But also, they do not have a very favorable schedule at all. With that being said, they start the season at Tulsa, who I think they'll beat, and then Oregon, who I think they'll lose to, 1-1. If they win that game, though, look out for Oklahoma State this season. My goodness, that would be crazy. Versus Murray State should be a win, 2-1. At West Virginia, I have Oklahoma State losing this game, 2-2. Then you get a bye week. Then you play UCF at home, 3-2. At Houston, I have this as a loss, 3-3. Versus Colorado, I have this as a loss as well, 3-4. At Iowa State, I have Oklahoma State winning this, so 4-4. At Kansas State, I have a loss for Oklahoma State, 4-5. Then you play Texas Tech at home. I think that's also a loss, so 4-6. You need 2 more wins. You play at Arizona State and versus Kansas. I think they get both those done. So Oklahoma State, I think, will be going bowling at 6-6 this season. TCU gets to play in Ireland against North Carolina in, 19 days now? 20 days, something like that. I think TCU is going to win this. I think TCU is going to be a very, very, very good team this year, severely underrated, I think. 1-0 for TCU. Come back home, play Grambling State. I think that's a win at 2-0. Arkansas State, that's a win, 3-0. At UCF, a win, 4-0. And then versus BYU versus home, I think that's another win, 5-0. Then you get a bye week, which is another reason why I think that TCU will win that game, because they'll be, I don't want to say getting ready for a bye week, but they know that they're going to have a bye week, which is, obviously an extra week of rest. Then you go to Baylor, which I think will be a win, 6-0, versus West Virginia, 7-0, versus Kansas, 8-0, but then you go to Arizona, which I think will be your first loss of the season at 8-1, and then versus Kansas State, I think you guys will win that one, 9-1, versus Utah, 10-1, and at Texas Tech, I think is going to be a loss, putting you guys at 10-2, and I believe, if I remember right, putting you guys also in the championship game against the team that I'm about to bring up next, which is Texas Tech. This one I'm going to keep short and sweet. I still think Texas Tech is going to be just as good even without Sorsby. I have them winning every single game this season. I don't think they have much of a struggle on their schedule at all. I think their hardest game of the year is going to be probably versus TCU. Their away games are Oregon State, Colorado, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. I don't see them having much of a struggle with the schedule, to be completely honest. But to go through all of their schedule, they have Abilene Christian at Oregon State versus Houston, Sam Houston, Colorado, Arizona State, Cincinnati, Arizona, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU. I don't see a loss because they don't play anyone tough on the road. Their toughest game on the road is probably going to be Oklahoma State, maybe Colorado, depending on Colorado, how good they actually are and what their record actually is at that point, because theoretically they could be 4-0. But I don't see it. I truthfully do not see them losing a game this year on their schedule. Our next team is Utah, who I think is going to be another very good team in the Big 12 this season. Starting off with Idaho, I think that's going to be a win, 1-0. Then you have Arkansas. I think that's going to be another win, 2-0. Utah State, another win, 3-0. At Iowa State, another win, 4-0. Versus Kansas, another win, 5-0. At Colorado, I think that's going to be another win, putting you guys at 6-0 going bowling. Then you come back home to play Houston. If you don't remember what I said earlier in the video, I think Houston's going to win this game and come into Utah, putting you guys at 6-1. Then you guys are going to go to Cincinnati. I think you guys are going to handle that one pretty easily, 7-1. Versus BYU, I have this as a loss for Utah, so 7-2. At Arizona, I think is going to be a win, 8-2. At TCU, that's going to be a loss, 8-3. And then versus West Virginia is going to be a win, putting you guys at 9-3 for the conference, or for your record, rather. And then our last and final team, we have West Virginia taking on Coastal Carolina. I think that's going to be a win. UT Martin, that's going to be another win, 2-0. And then versus Virginia, I had Virginia winning this one, so putting you guys at 2-1. Then versus Oklahoma State, I think that's going to be a win, 3-1. At Iowa State, that's going to be a loss, 3-2. Versus Arizona, that'll be a win, 3-3. I think that game, though, could also be very much of a flip. I could see a last-second field goal, last-second touchdown to win the game very easily for either team. Versus Cincinnati, I think that's going to be a loss, 3-4. At TCU, that's going to be another loss, 3-5. At Texas Tech, that's going to be another loss, 3-6. Then versus Kansas, I think you guys get that one done, 4-6. Versus Houston, I don't think you guys have enough to get that one as a win, but I think you guys can keep it close. So 5-6, and then at Utah, that's going to be a loss, putting you guys at 5-7. So the teams that I have bowling this year in the Big 12, we have, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 10 teams bowling from the Big 12. Maybe I have some bias because I'm a Big 12 guy, Big 12 fan, of course. But Arizona, Arizona State, BYU, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Texas Tech, and Utah are going to be bowling. Obviously, I think Texas Tech's going to be in the playoff again. Possibly TCU with their 10-2 record, depending on if they can knock off Texas Tech in the championship game. Again, that's who I think will be in the Big 12 title game. But yeah, so I do have a lot of high hopes for a lot of these Big 12 teams. Again, Colorado, like I said earlier in the video, I think that a lot of their schedule could be very all over the place. I just don't feel like I know enough about them to make for sure wins or for sure losses in some of those games. Like I said, like the one at Baylor, I think that could be a win very easily. Northwestern could be a loss very easily. Georgia Tech, I don't think they're anything special, but I don't think Colorado is either. I just kind of picked the home team in that game, and it's also the first game of the season as well. So Colorado could be another team that could be potentially a dark horse in the Big 12, I think. But I think for Colorado, too, a big thing is how their first 4 games go before they get to that Texas Tech game. Because if they're sitting at 2-2, the rest of their season's probably not going to look very good. If they're sitting at 4-0, though, I think they could be 9-3, maybe 8-4 by the time the season ends. So yeah, that is it for this video. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to hit the thumbs up. I'm going to try to be posting every week at very bare minimum until the season starts. And then once the season starts, I'll be posting 3 times a week. So make sure to come back to those. Again, if you're an Iowa State fan, want to go watch that video, you definitely should check it out. I have us going bowling. See who you think that I think. Go watch and see who I think we will beat and lose to. So yeah, that's it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.